In this episode of Material Impact, we're talking to Justin Kennington, former president of the SDVoE Alliance, and someone who knows what it takes to move from supplier to industry leader. We worked together for over 5 years, helping SDVoE build momentum and shift how manufacturers saw the value of their technology. If you've ever struggled to get your innovation adopted, this conversation is full of lessons worth hearing. Today we have Justin Kennington with us. Someone who really understands the unique challenges of marketing a supplier-driven innovation to manufacturers and how to create a movement around it. Justin and I go back, I think, to December 2019 when we first started working together, as in his role as president of the SDVoE Alliance, I got it right, where he helped manufacturers embrace a new chip technology and sell its benefits to the market. And if that sounds familiar to the people that we're hoping to attract, it should, because this is the same challenge many industrial suppliers face every day as they try to sell their goods. So hello, Justin.
Hey, Mark. I'm going to say it had to be at least 2017. We've been at this a while, you and me.
Oh, was it 17?
I wasn't 19, for sure.
I wasn't with you right when you launched. It took a little bit of time.
No, but
Remember,
2019.
you had your website up.
But end of 2019 was like the week before COVID, and we were good friends by then.
Of course. We were eating lunch in your garage at the beginning of COVID.
That's
just
right.
Before you took off to head back to the States.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's true. You're right. 2017. I'll take it. So here we are, all these years later, and you're back in Cape Cod. Well, you're in Cape Cod.
One is on Cape Cod.
Oh, apologies. There's certain sensitivities to being on Cape Cod.
Well, I just, tell me you're not from here without telling me you're not from here, I'm just trying to help.
So I've had the pleasure of visiting you on Cape Cod a couple of times in your role as president of the Alliance. But Justin, why don't you give us a little bit of background on what the Alliance is and what your goals were?
So I joined a small startup-y sort of company in 2016 who had a new technology that we needed to push to market. Just a little background, because I feel like context, helps. I was in the professional audio video space. My particular focus as a product leader was around video distribution, right? I used to joke, you sit down in a conference room and you plug your laptop in and the picture shows up on that TV over there. You know what I'm talking about. Well, I design, build, and sell the most expensive ways possible to make that happen. Without getting too much into the nitty-gritty details, essentially the startup company I went to work for had come up with an entirely new way to move those signals around, to move them over a computer network instead of specific infrastructure built just for moving video, right? You can imagine this is going to reduce your cost, allow you to better integrate your systems as a business, and that's all great. But here we were, a small company trying to push not only an innovation, but really a whole new way for the end customer to use these systems. And the challenge was,
right,
how do you push that out, so that our customers, the product manufacturers, would buy into it and be able to sell the concept to their customers, the businesses, the end users of audio video technology. What we decided to do was we built a marketing alliance. It was called the Software Defined Video over Ethernet Alliance, SDVoE. So my first tip to you is pick a better name for your alliance that isn't a 5-letter acronym nobody can get right. But we made the best of it. But the idea was then we, the small manufacturer of this chipset at the core of the technology, got a few of our manufacturer customers on board with the concept, and had them buy into a marketing alliance, really an independent third-party organization whose role was to go out to the end customer market and pitch the benefits of this technology to them, right? We're going to tell them, oh, we're going to do it all on your computer network, and that's going to make everything cheaper. It's going to make everything easier to manage. You're not going to have separate systems for video from your computers and your Wi-Fi and your printers and all that. So we had all these great list of benefits. And we would, as the alliance, go out and preach those benefits to the end customers. And the idea is to get them to wake up and say, hey, that does sound great. I need this. How can I get it? And then, of course, as the alliance, we say, well, here's this list of member companies, all of whom use this technology, and we're going to drive demand to them that way, right? So while the manufacturers are out there pushing, their channel and saying, hey, we got a new product, come check it out, we were sort of creating this pull where the end users would come to those guys and say, tell me about this. I want to get some.
Well, let's talk about this a little bit, because when we met, I think a lot of the challenge was the fact that the people who were working for the manufacturers and the people you were dealing with mostly were not marketing people. They were product people. They were the people who were building and responsible for specs mostly and sourcing the chips for their boxes, right? So
Yeah.
what was the challenge there in terms of getting these people to understand the importance of being in a marketing alliance to sell a chip, or to promote the benefits of a chip that was, only one piece of their overall huge marketing, product line?
Well, depending on the individual company, it may have been a pretty big piece of their product line.
Right.
Um,
Fair. Yeah.
there's folks in that particular industry. There are companies that are, smaller, medium-sized companies, who might be focused entirely on the segment of professional audio video that is video distribution. So for those guys, it's like, kind of almost betting the company on our technology, right? If they're gonna if all we do is
Right.
video distribution, and now we're gonna start doing video distribution this way, they've got a lot of eggs in that basket. So there's a
Right.
certain way you want to talk to them, right? And that's about how do they approach their customers, especially in light of their competition, right? Their competition who may not be doing it this way. And we're going to sell them by saying, look, the alliance's job is going to go out there and do that marketing for you. Either in support of your already strong marketing team, or in place of a marketing team that maybe isn't that strong, or doesn't exist in some of the smaller cases. Um, the other kind of customer is the bigger company, who exists in the sort of professional audio video and what they'd call building management space. They might have a very broad product line, across wide segments of technology, and then
Right.
and then that video distribution piece is just a part of it. But it would still be for them about, showing them that this technology is going to help them win, right? That's what we're going to say to their product leaders. But then we're gonna say, look, and this alliance exists, and we want you to come join it, because this is going to show the benefits of this technology to your customers, right? We're going to have those customers knocking on your door saying, where can I get some SDVoE? Can you sell me some SDVoE? And who doesn't want that, right? I want inbound sales leads better, more than outbound, if I can get them.
100%. But in this space, there's overly technical information,
Oh yeah.
and that you needed to package, right, as a marketing message, right? How did you guys go about simplifying that so that it became compelling but gave just enough of the technical?
Well, I think, there's a lot of stratifying your message, right? Knowing your audience. If it's me on stage, right, then that's an easy case. I can look at the audience, I can feel out who they are, and get as technical or as non-technical as we need to. Um, but in the bigger picture of marketing, you want to think about, for each piece of marketing I'm putting out, who is the audience I'm looking at, right? And in the case of SDVoE, that could be, someone in the CTO or CIO's office, at a large enterprise, somebody who has a lot of conference rooms and a lot of TVs and needs to hook them up, right? I don't want to bother that person with, hey, we support this particular Ethernet frame size. Like, that's not relevant information to
Right.
them. I
But
want to I want to support them by talking about their costs. Go ahead.
let me just break in. I think this is really interesting to me, because when we started working together, we looked at your entire infrastructure. And one of the things that you guys were doing really well at the time was, when somebody came to your website and they said, okay, I'm interested in this, the form on your website actually had a self-identifying drop-down that
Oh yeah.
said, my role is this, my role is this, this is the type of company that I worked for. So right away, we were able to segment, right, who was joining the list so that we could eventually segment the message going out to meet that person's role and need.
Absolutely. That's kind of what I'm what I'm trying to get at, and you're doing a good job of explaining the infrastructure for it. But yeah, to me, if I want to, if I'm going to talk to somebody, anybody, whether I'm trying to sell them something or just be their friend or whatever, I need to understand a little bit about who they are, what they're interested in, right? And that in the marketing context, whether that's whatever the context is in the marketing context, that's going to help me get the message that's going to be important to them, right? I don't want to bore people. I don't want to make them feel intimidated that I'm so technical smart and they're not. I want them to feel like, my product, in the case of marketing, my product can help answer some of the challenges and problems that that person has.
Right.
And so to do that, I need to first understand what problems and challenges do they have, and the problems a CIO has are very different than the problems that an AV installation technician has, are very different than the problems that an AV system designer has. And I want to talk to each of those people and show them how my products can address their specific concerns and challenges.
Right, and a big part of that program was your SDVoE Academy, which was a learning program designed to, you know, certify people on how to properly implement SDVoE enabled products.
Yeah, people love learning. People love to be certified. And somebody taught me a long time ago, if they're listening to you, they're not listening to your competitor at this moment, right? So the more in-depth, engaging content we can create, um, the more we're going to have those people in our universe thinking about it our way.
Right.
And I think that the educational component is a benefit both ways, right? We're going to make that person smarter. We're going to make them hopefully better able to do their job and understand the challenges and solutions that exist. But also, like I said, they're going to be paying attention to us. They're going to be learning it our way. And I think that because people value education, it makes it much easier to engage someone than a video about my latest and greatest product and what kind of whiz bang features it has.
Right. And I will say, I mean, when we started working together, and you can talk a little bit about this, a lot of the initial work that we did was making sure that everything was measurable, right? Like uh, putting the right pieces into place to know that what was happening was working. And one of the things I appreciated most about our time together working as, agency and client was your willingness to try just about anything, right? You were up for anything. Like we were fixing up the website. You were trying different like styles of, people would think they're webinars, but they weren't. You wanted to create a TV show, so we created a TV show for you that we ran for a year. Then you wanted to try a different thing, so we moved on. When we talked about getting the word out, you were all over YouTube, you were all over Google Ads. Like, let's talk a little bit about that, the marketing of, getting eyeballs to the Alliance.
Sure. I think, ultimately the marketing at that level is a lot about creativity, right? And understanding sort of, I mean, our alliance was a small organization, right? And our budget was whatever membership dues we could convince our members to pay. Um, and so that means we need to be efficient, right? Now, if you're a huge brand with multi-million dollar marketing budgets, go buy some Super Bowl ads, sponsor a stadium and put your name on it, and great, Coca-Cola, you're doing awesome. Um, but when you're small, you've got to really be efficient. And I think what that tends to mean is trying to find the places that the dollars haven't really moved into yet. In early 2020, right when COVID hit, and everybody was quickly, trying to adjust to let's make webinars all the time. Just like you said, I said no, 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 no. Let's make a TV show. And that got us, great exposure, great engagement with our particular audience, for the same kinds of costs that a webinar would have had. And in fact, if you go look at the pro AV industry now, there's several folks out there from marketing agencies to big manufacturers that have their own TV shows. I'll just throw out there that none of them do it live, which is especially challenging. We did. Um, but
Especially with control room in the UK.
that's true. That's true. We were multi-continent. Um, but, but the point is, once it's clear that something, and this goes way beyond marketing, but it's true in marketing too. Once it's clear that something really works, all the dollars start pouring into it. All of your competitors get into it. All of the big brands and the big money gets into it, and and the small guy has trouble affording that, right? Google ads are not as effective today as they were 10 years ago, right?
Right.
And I don't even know what's after TikTok, but it's going to be something after TikTok, right? I think TikTok has turned into a pretty heavily monetized platform. I don't know that it's the right place for a lot of B2B marketers, but the point is these things move, and if you're thinking about what worked 10 years ago, it might still work, but it's going to work in a much more expensive way. And so I think it's important, if you need to be efficient, it's important to try and be creative and think about, how am I going to get this message out? What's the weird way that people haven't proven out yet, but that maybe I can prove to myself?
Yeah, and I think let's just go back to this launch of the show versus trade shows. I think the need to have the show in the first place was because of COVID, trade shows were being canceled, right?
Yeah.
You have two big ones that you're going to every year. The Alliance attends every year, one in North America, one in Europe. Huge installations, very well thought out, presence at these shows. And all of a sudden they were, yanked out from under you. So you had to come up with something, A, that would help put you in front of the audience, and also use to come back from these trade shows with tons of content that would sustain us
Yeah.
for months afterwards. So we needed something to fill that gap. But eventually we couldn't do both. When trade shows came back online, we had to make some choices. So in your mind, Justin, today, like if you were still running the Alliance today, would you say that you would be all in on trade shows still in the same way, these two a year, big budget attendance at these shows? Or would you think of these things differently? I don't know the right answer for you. I'm just putting it out there.
I mean, to be perfectly honest, I don't even know the answer in that world anymore, right? What Mark didn't
Right.
tell you is, at the end of 2023, I retired. Um, and I've most recently moved on to a totally different industry that's like business to consumer, and we don't even have to go there. But the point is, I've been wearing a very different hat because I like a challenge, and so I decided, hey, I'm gonna bet the farm and start up in an entirely new industry with an entirely new different structure of marketing than I've ever done before. What could possibly go wrong? So that said, I haven't thought a lot about pro AV marketing in the last year and a half.
Fair.
But the challenge with trade shows in particular, I think, is that, or I say the challenge with thinking about pulling back on trade shows, is that these in pro AV, and I'm sure in many other sort of niche kind of industries like that, these are big gathering spots for tens of thousands of people that are part of this industry, and there's a lot of visibility on who's there and who's not. And there is the possibility, if you pull back too much, there's the possibility of sending a certain message, sending the message that basically we're in trouble. And depending on where you are in your life cycle, that can be a potentially really harmful message to send. So you have to be aware of that. And at the same time, you have to be smart and efficient and make sure that whatever your key metric is, if that's cost per lead or something like that, that you're really getting that in the right way. I mean, cost per lead wasn't the be all end all for us, but I do remember stats like, our TV show is generating, I don't remember the real numbers, but like the cost per lead is $5, and at the trade show, the cost per lead is $85. Like, if you just look at it that way, um, and there's other things to consider, but it could be vastly different. So you have to strike a balance. I wish I had something more intelligent to say about the last 2 years of the pro AV industry, to tell the rest of that story. But what I would say is that if I were still there, if I were still making those decisions, I would be thoughtful about them every 6 months. I would not just spend the money the way we've always spent the money because we've always spent the money that way. I think that is an easy trap to fall into and a potentially big mistake.
Yeah, and also you know, alliance members have expectations that you have to meet. Like there's a lot of factors that go into deciding, am I going to do this whole hog or am I going to pull back the reins a little bit? I mean, it's not just you're in your role at the time, you know, you're answering to a certain degree the membership. And if they need it and want it, then you got to be there anyhow. It doesn't really matter.
Well, on the one hand, that's true. On the other hand, if you're doing your job running an alliance like that, you got everybody pretty well in hand, and you know,
Yeah, you got to push back. Yeah.
you can do whatever you want and convince them it's a great idea.
So Justin, let's talk. Let's shift gears a little bit and talk just a touch about how, when we did meet in 2017, and you know, where did you think the state of your marketing program was versus when we left off, right? What was the evolution in your mind, and the role that we played in getting you there?
You know, I appreciated your comments and compliments on what we had when you showed up, you know, and the approach of segmenting the audience and making sure that we understood who we were talking to. But I think that uh, although maybe I knew that was a good idea at the time, we made a lot of progress over the years in refining that, right? In getting better, not necessarily more granular, because there's only so much granularity you need, but making sure that in every way, every time we touched someone, we would try to learn something about them in addition to pushing out our message. Um, and then also broadening our content and what I was like content approach, you know, meaning is this a white paper? Is this a webinar? Is this a TV show? Is it a YouTube short? You know, whatever. Broadening the ways that we get at the message as well as the different messages per audience. I think that that growth was really the important thing, and you know, you could see measurable results in social media following, in our lead database, in the engagement we would get with the content that we put out there. You know, we would see all that grow as we got better at understanding the audience. You know, we started our conversation there. I think that's such an important thing. When I mean, if I look at myself as the customer, right? The people that don't try to understand me and just want to talk about what they want to talk about, like I hang up on those people, right? This is not a, I don't spend 10 seconds on this. Like I spend 5 seconds and that's how long it takes me to hang up, right? Um, and that's, I don't think that's just me. I think, you know, people want to feel understood. Everybody's got their own set of problems and,
Yeah.
and there's a certain just empathy you have to have for that. You know, it doesn't have to be all touchy feely, but it has to be, I understand what's making your life hard, and let me share with you a little bit about the things I can offer that might make that easier.
Yeah, I love that. That's great. I think also some of the stuff that we were able to work on together was pretty cool. Like I think one of my favorite projects during that time was bringing in the team to do the audit of the e-learning program,
Yeah.
the training program, the certification program,
Yep.
SDVoE Academy. We had an extensive audit with a really smart group at that time, help us make that better. I think, you know, we were able to launch your YouTube channel. We launched, you know, your Google ad campaign. Um, all these little things. I think we onboarded HubSpot together at
Oh,
the
yeah.
time.
Yeah.
Oh, remember that? That was a lot of fun, wasn't it?
Well, but its purpose was that audience segmentation, right? Now, how do we send
Exactly,
different messages to
exactly.
different groups? That's yeah, that's what it's for.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. So any lessons as we wrap up this discussion? Any lessons that you would want to share with, you know, put your another cap on for a second. How could you relate, like, you know, maybe it's not a fair question, but how would you relate what you did there to, you know, the people that we're trying to talk to in our audience today? You know, we've had a shift in focus and mindset in terms of who our niche that we want to serve is.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of lessons from the software space that you were in, the Pro AV space, to, you know, just marketing lessons that manufacturers in general uh, can learn when, or the suppliers of those pieces to manufacturers, you know, are there any lessons that you think could translate quite well over to that
I mean,
different industry?
maybe it's obvious, but I think that the structure of what we tried to build is important. Meaning, if you really want to sell somebody something that's new, then help them sell it to their customers, right? Well, I mean, why would you not, right? If you've got some innovation, some technology, something that you think is so great that it's just going to sell itself when your customers go to their customers, well then why don't you just go help them do that and show them, right? If the word customer showed up too many times, it's kind of an annoying sentence, but if your customer's customer starts banging down your customer's door to say, I've
Yeah.
heard about this, I want it, then like you're on easy street. Because now your customer is going to come to you and say, I need more of it, I need more of it, I need more of it. And that's just going to relieve so much of the push that you've got to do. That if it goes right, will make you very successful.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that the Alliance did super well was recognize that all of that sort of research and effort in sourcing new materials really came from a digital first approach, right? In the areas that we're talking to, sales teams rule the day, right? It's all handshakes and trade shows and
Yeah.
cold calls and all that sort of thing. But in the space where we're looking at, and I think there's a big lesson to be learned from the SDVoE Alliance, is that you've got to be online first, because that's where the buyers from these manufacturing companies are starting their journeys in terms of sourcing new materials. And if you're not there with your case studies, your white papers, your website, your social, your ads, your this, your that, you're not even in a consideration set anymore.
Well, I don't know the world that you're talking about, but what you just told me is that there's a huge opportunity there, right? If it's all still face to face handshakes and trade shows, I mean that's great. There's a ton of value in that person to person communication.
Yep.
But if most of the smart money hasn't yet moved to this digital first place, then that's what I was talking about 10 minutes ago. This is your
Right.
opportunity. Move first to that and and get it now while it's cheap. Make some hay while the sun is shining, right? And then 10 years from now, we'll be talking about how, oh, you used to be able to get LinkedIn ads for real cheap in the metals industry, not anymore. But you know what? But you did. So
Yeah.
good.
At the time. Yeah, exactly. Well, great. This was a great first show. I really appreciate you taking the time. I really appreciate your patience also, Justin, with the technical setup. So thank you. Thanks a million. I hope everybody's well on your end, and we'll talk soon again.
We're all good here. Remember, your audience never knows what happened before you hit record. So,
That's true. Well, they do now. Good stuff. Thanks for everything.
All right. Thanks, Mark.